My first recording was still made before the electric recording was invented and introduced. It was still the acoustical recording. Now, the acoustical recording meant that there was no microphone. There was some sort of a funnel into which you played. The orchestra was crammed into a small room in 3 tiers, but the room wasn't particularly high. And only the instruments that sat pretty close to the horn had a chance of being really registered. Horns were out, mellophones were used instead. String basses could not register. It was the bass tuba that had to play. So my first recording of the Mozart E-flat symphony still had a bass tuba. And I remember that I rehearsed prior to a recording that then Richard Strauss conducted himself with members of the Berlin State Opera Orchestra, of which he then was the general music director. We did Don Juan with very few strings, with a complete complement of winds, the strings placed so that they were very close to that funnel-like horn, and the others crammed, they couldn't even move. It sounded awful, but that was the best that was to be had. And then I think in 1924, 25 in Europe, I'm talking about Europe, of course, the electric recording with a microphone was gradually introduced, and from there on, so many changes have taken place, which are now already the history of electric recording, that I don't have to tell you much about it. I studied for a very short time as a boy in Leipzig with Max Reger. Didn't learn much from him. I was 13, and his class was full of students, much too big, so that his instruction was by necessity a very superficial one. Furthermore, he was in the habit of filling most of the time by telling his students dirty stories, and since I was a little underage, I was always sent out the door. I studied piano with Richard Robert in Vienna, who was also the teacher of Rudolf Serkin and some others. And theory, I studied mainly with Mandichevsky, who was the great friend of Brahms, and a very, very fine musical scholar, and also the co-editor of the complete Brahms edition. Then with J.B. Förster, a Czech composer, and this was about all. And my main studies consisted in studying the scores and generally the works of the great composers of the past, working with the music. And since I started as a pianist, actually, I was a prodigy pianist, and since I also started composing at the age of 7, went on until my occupation with other composers' music became so intensive that there was no concentration left for my own music. So I was a pretty finished musician at the age of 12. And from there on, I kept on learning, and I keep on learning, and I hope to keep on learning until my last days.